layman's perspective, it's a way of preventing various illness and diseases, right? I also know, and if you care to tell me about it later on, that people have sort of, I don't know if it's a myth, but people have a thing against vaccination, some religious and all that. So let's break it down first, talk about, what it is, what it does and everything. Then maybe later on we'll see about what some myths are and if we can bust them on the show. So talk to us. When we say vaccination, what are we referring to?
Okay, so it's basically the use of vaccines. Okay, so let me just explain what vaccines are. They are, let me say, chemical or medical preparations that are used to trigger the body's immune system so that the body will be able to recognize specific, should I say, pathogens, not necessarily organisms, but anything that can cause disease.
Okay.
Specific organisms or maybe products of organisms that can cause disease. The body will be able to identify them very quickly, and then if they get into contact with those organisms or pathogens again, the body is able to build up a very good response to those pathogens, if I should use the word. Yes.
Okay.
So basically, that's what they are. So they actually just help the body to produce its own reaction to these kind of things. Usually, if you have like your first encounter with a disease or something of the sort, the body takes a long time to build its defense. It's like, if maybe you are now, this is your first time meeting somebody, you have to take your time, approach, see the way the person will react to this, will react to that. Then okay, now this is his weak point. I can beat him this way. So the body takes time to develop that. And usually, by the time the body develops it, the organism has multiplied and has caused a lot of damage to the body.
Okay.
So now the vaccines give you either a dead aspect of the organism or like a piece of the part of the body of the organism that once the body notices it, they can start building up that, should I say, a primary response. So then the next time when the real organism comes to the body
is prepared.
Yes. So then they attack it very quickly, and then the person doesn't get the disease from the organism.
Okay, that's how I understand it. It's like soldiers who train in preparation for war. So the body is training itself in preparation for when these organisms would attack it, and it will be ready to fight it by the introduction of the vaccine.
Exactly.
Okay. But you mentioned earlier on that you said is a chemical preparation. I thought they use the organism themselves to formulate the vaccine.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's like they have adjuvants, they have preservatives. It's like it's like how drugs are. You have the active ingredients, but then you have what is with it that potentiates it, and then you have what will preserve it. And sometimes you need what we call stabilizers, so that they can keep it within. Otherwise, it will break down. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the benefits of vaccination then. What are the benefits?
Yes. So once you get vaccinated, it's easier to travel to other countries and all those things. So you can just get vaccinated before you go to a certain country where there's a disease. Then you know that you are protected. And you can also know that someone is not bringing a disease to your country. That's why you're traveling. They'll ask you to do certain vaccinations before you enter certain countries. They don't want you to bring those diseases into the countries. And then there are also a lot of diseases that used to be very prevalent, but now we don't even see them anymore. It's because of vaccination, like polio. At first, you used to see a lot of children with their legs around a stake and all that. Now, how many of those children do you see? Even in the village, how many do you see of those things? In the hospital, we used to see a lot of the children with the meningitis. When I was a student many years ago, you would see a lot of these babies with meningitis and all that. But with this, the expanded vaccination program, they've added a lot of viruses and things, vaccines to it. Hardly do you see babies coming in with the meningitis anymore. So it really reduces the prevalence of those diseases that could easily kill or probably paralyze or cause lifelong effects for the children especially.
I remember when growing up, we used to hear, and I'm sure it's still there, but like you said, the prevalence has gone down. The 6 killer disease for for children.
Exactly, diphtheria and all those things. Yes.
Measles, whooping cough, and all that. Because of vaccination, most of these are not really as prevalent as it was before.
Yes.
Okay, but let's look at the effectiveness of vaccines, though, in preventing illness or transmission. How effective? Because I don't know. My understanding is that sometimes you get vaccinated and you still contract whatever disease there is.
Okay. So first of all, vaccines are not 100%. So the thing is, they are supposed to push your body's immune system to build up the defense. They are not like a cure to the disease in itself.
Okay.
So it's dependent on the individual's immune status as well. Yes, but mostly we tend to say 80% chance, as in if you have vaccinated, there's high 80% chance that
you are not going to get a disease.
Yes.
Okay.
So even if you get the disease, you'll be able to combat it, and you won't be put down completely by the disease. It won't kill you.
Okay.
Or give you the severe effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But also vaccines for life. Like once you take a vaccine, is it for life, or maybe you have to repeat it at some point in time?
It depends on the type of vaccine. Okay, so it depends on the active ingredients. So there are some that use the live attenuated vaccine. So those are the most potent and they last the longest. They can give you lifetime coverage. So those ones is like the organism has been killed or has been weakened to the extent that it can't multiply in your system, but it will be there to produce that same immune effect. So if you are using live attenuated vaccines, yes, but a lot of the recent vaccines are not like that. They are probably bits and pieces of the structure of the organism, or the should I say the chemical. Something like tetanus is not the organism that actually causes the disease.
Okay.
The organism produces should I say a chemical, and that is what causes the disease. So we would have some parts of or bits of the structure, the chemical structure in the vaccines that the body is able to identify, but those ones don't give the memory cells are not able to last so long with those ones. So sometimes you might need boosters. Sometimes you might need to take it maybe 6 months intervals for maybe 3-4 times before your body finally gets the message and then can fight it for a lifetime.
Okay.
So it depends on the type of vaccine and the way it works. So something like the COVID vaccine,
I was going to mention that.
Yes. So that one was, I think some of them were mRNA. So it's like a piece of the DNA, a bit of the DNA is what they've used to let the body get the immune response. And that was quite weak. So within a short time, the memory cells let go of it, and you would have to get a booster vaccine to still be able to produce that protective immune response.
Okay, that's why people were taking the vaccine, all right, but then later on they get the disease again.
Well, there were a lot of other controversies.
I mean, when it comes to COVID, there's a lot of conspiracy about it, so we don't want to go into it, but
there were issues about like they didn't study it for long enough.
Okay.
Yes. So most of what we have, the vaccines we have, we've studied them for many years, and we can see the effects. Sometimes it might not be the active ingredient itself, but maybe the stabilizer is not keeping the chemical thing stable enough to be able to work in the body, and a whole lot of other things to consider in those.
Okay. Let's look at risks, though, because I mentioned that some people have a challenge against taking vaccines because of maybe some associated risks with these vaccines. So what are some of them, and do we have any long-term health effects from vaccination?
Okay. First of all, I want to just reiterate that vaccines are mostly safe.
Okay.
Like 80-90% safe. Okay. Because people might have maybe allergic reactions to them, or maybe some might have some rare side effects. But it's like every drug that you take, even paracetamol, some people are allergic, some people have some side effects and all that. So it's understandable. Aside that, there may be a few cases where you would have some very strange side effects and all that, maybe swelling of the arm where the injection was and all that. But those ones are very rare. They are not that common. So it's not really so risky to take vaccinations, except if the person is critically ill and their immune system is already down.
Yeah.
So in that case, it will not be advisable to give them, especially if you are doing like a live attenuated vaccine or something, because their immune system will not produce the response, and then the organism is just going to be lying there. Yeah. So in those cases, or maybe someone who is on chemotherapy or is taking immunosuppressant medication due to whatever illness, they might not be good candidates for vaccination. Aside that, it should be more or less safe, like all other drugs that people take. Yeah.
Okay, because again, I mean, if you go back to COVID, I remember that when those vaccines were given, certain individuals reacted adversely to it. I remember in my office, I mean, I was fine. I didn't feel anything, but I know some people also who didn't come to work for like 2-3 days, because they were done. So I guess it goes back to the individual and how we react to some of these ones. But let's delve into some technicalities a bit. Let's look at safety and efficacy of vaccines. If we can find out how vaccines are tested for safety and for their efficacy.
Okay, so more or less they are tested the same way drugs are tested. They go through clinical trials. They go through phases of testing: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. That's when it's human testing, before they are actually brought on the market. Yeah. So these phases actually take quite a period of time, because they want to wait and see if maybe, aside the immediate side effects, if after 3 months, after 6 months, they will have any side effects again from the chemical or the medication or the vaccine.
Okay.
Yeah. So normally it goes through a whole long process before it comes out on the market and is released to people, for people to use massively on a large scale.
Okay.
So generally, once it comes out and then FDA has approved it, that means they've actually looked into the chemical aspects of it to make sure it's safe for human consumption and consumption for us in this country, because we have a different climate, and Africans have different, should I say, nuances of the way our bodies work. It's different from Asians, different from Caucasians and all that. So they take all those things into consideration. And I think FDA has an app called Med Safety app.
Okay.
So once you download it, they have alerts that come up on the app. So if maybe there's any issue, Food and Drugs issue, any drug that they are giving a warning about, it comes on the app. And also if you have any side effect from any medication you've taken, whether it is antacid you've drank or paracetamol, painkiller, whatever, once you have a reaction, you just send it through the app, so that they can have a way of monitoring how the people are reacting to these medications, and if they feel they have to stop a drug or investigate further, then they will do that.
Okay, I guess it will form part of the process for monitoring vaccine safety even after approval.
Yes.
Are there any other processes for monitoring that vaccine safety after approval?
Not that I know of. But generally, they actually do. There's a lot of things going on in the background before the drugs even come on the market. Because I think a while ago, not in Ghana anyway, in another African country, I think Guinea-Bissau or something, they wanted to bring in a certain vaccine, but then their drug board had also heard there was an issue. So they also did their own investigations, and then they found out that that vaccine was related to more female babies dying and all that.
Wow.
So they didn't even allow the drug to come in. So there's a lot of work going on in the background. So once they come out and then they are massively circulating, that means they've actually done some due diligence and it's actually safe.
Okay, all right. But how can one stay up to date with these recommended vaccinations and boosters? How do we stay up to date with them?
Well, usually the main thing about the vaccination is the children. They are the most important because they are the most vulnerable to a lot of these diseases. So once the children go through their vaccination, schedule, they do the BCG for the TB, polio vaccine and all those things. They have the how many weeks old they are before they can take and all that. Once they do that, they should be able to have like mostly healthy childhoods. The adults, if maybe you are at risk of certain diseases, then you might use those vaccines like hepatitis B, it's not for general use, but if maybe you are married to someone who has the disease, or you are working maybe in a medical field where you are always dealing directly with patients who have these diseases, yes, you should get vaccinated. But basically, the vaccination is based on if you are at risk and if you really need it. So like the HPV virus vaccine, the HPV virus can cause cervical cancer. So we're trying to let people know about it so that the women will go in for the vaccination at a younger age. But basically, it's risk-based.
Okay.
It's not
but let me ask though, do we have like a vaccine for every kind of disease, or there are specific diseases that have these vaccines?
Well, there are specific diseases. It's not all diseases.
I would take all the vaccines and we never get sick.
Yeah, but one thing I want to say is, even if you get vaccinated, that is not a free reign thing for you to go and then be having unprotected sex and be living risky lifestyle, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Always,
you still need to protect yourself.
Yes, be safe. The vaccine does not mean you cannot get the infection or you cannot get the disease. So just be safe and then protect yourself, do your hand hygiene and all that, keep yourself healthy.
Okay. In wrapping up, and as you mentioned that especially for kids, they need to go through vaccination. Talk to some parents out there who still have some doubts when it comes to vaccination.
Okay, so the vaccination for kids, it's very, should I say, very good, very helpful for the kids. And don't say they are babies and maybe they are too young. They are not too young. They have been studied for years, and they know at which age, how many weeks old they are, that is safe for them. The calendar has been made in such a way with the timing and the scheduling so that you can space them out well. Don't think we are giving too many vaccines. It's actually quite okay. The number of pathogens children are exposed to on their own, crawling around, putting things in their mouth, all that, the immune system is also building defense against all those things that they are exposed to. They are exposed to millions of things. So these vaccines are not so many to overwhelm the child. It's very safe, and it's actually better than keeping them not vaccinated and waiting till they are older. That means in their younger years, where they are more at risk of easily dying, that's when they are more exposed to these diseases.
And most vaccinations are free, right?
Yes, with the expanded program on immunization from the Ghana government, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for coming and giving us education on vaccination. We hope to see you next week, Wednesday. All right. Thank you once again. That was Dr. Emefa Dzide, Senior Medical Officer at Wejagbawe Municipal Hospital, joining us this afternoon for our Hello Doc segment. She'll be back